Finally, Formula One is back, and I'm going to make some season predictions. But first, let's listen to the Formula One theme. Hit it! No, not that one! Not that one! Yes, that's basically the F1 theme at this point, the Dutch national anthem. We're going to hear it 24 times this year. All right, not actually, but I am going to tell you how many times I think we hear that anthem this year. But I'm going to give you all 20 places in the driver's standings. I'm going to give you all 10 places in the constructor's standings. I'm going to have some bold predictions. There's a couple that you won't believe. I'm going to have some not mediocre, but some mild predictions, and I'll have some pretty boring predictions. You guys know which one I'm talking about. We're going to predict some individual races, only 3 I have written down unless I feel inspired to pick more during this. I'm going to tell you who I think wins races this year. I'm going to tell you, as I said, podiums, who I think is going to sit on the podium. Last year, we saw 11 different drivers on the podium. 2022, we only saw 7, I think. So will we see another increase this year? You're going to figure out in this video. The majority of these predictions are probably going to be wrong. I know one that's going to be right. We'll get to it later, but first, let's do it. Let's do the driver's standings. From 20th to 1st, let's look at the 2024 Formula One driver's standings. 24 races this year. A few sprints this year. I want to say 6, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But yes, there's a lot of points to be handed out this year. I don't think we see a single team get shut out. I don't think we see a driver get shut out this year. Last time we saw a driver go scoreless was back with the old car in 2021 when Haas, as a team, went scoreless. And speaking of Haas, I have low expectations this year, which is why in 20th I have Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen did not have the greatest 2023. He had a solid 2022. Obviously, that 2022 season opener at Bahrain finished 5th. And then later in the year, scored a pole at Brazil. 2023 was a different story, though. Haas has been on the struggle bus since that 2022 season. They spent 2021 essentially tanking. And then 2022, they took a big step forward. 2023, they took another step backwards, and I think 2024 is going to be another step backwards. So Kevin Magnussen, I have finishing last in the driver's standings, and as I said, I have no expectations for Haas this year, which is why I have Nico Hülkenberg in 19th. I have extremely low expectations for Haas. The F1 team has been in shambles the past year or so. The NASCAR team is not in much better shape. But no, we're not here to talk about Stewart-Haas Racing. We're here to talk about Haas F1, and I have them 20th and 19th in the driver's standings. Just really low expectations for them this year. And then we go to 18th, and this is another team I have low expectations for, but not as low as Haas. 18th, I've got Zhou Guanyu. He actually has not had a terrible F1 career. He's kept it clean for the most part. He's had his weekends where he'll randomly show up in qualifying or he'll sneak in a few points every once in a while. And I expect about the same. It's a big year for him. I think it's a contract year. He's going to have to perform well, but stake F1 kicking Sauber, Alfa Romeo, whatever they're called now, I just don't have high expectations for him. So ultimately, I'm going to have Zhou Guanyu finishing 18th. And then I have his teammate Valtteri Bottas 17th. I promise through these predictions, I don't have all the teammates bunched up together. But ultimately, these two teams I just have really low expectations for. And Haas, I have really low expectations for. So I have them bottom. And then I have, I'm just going to call them Sauber. Sauber, I have 18th and 17th in the points. 16th, I think this is going to be a step up for him this year. I know he only scored 1 point last year. There's low expectations this year, but I do think him and his team take a step forward this year. I think Logan Sargent finishes 16th in the driver's standings. Sargent scored his one and only point last year at the Circuit of the Americas, one of his 3 home races. And I think Williams does take a step forward this year. They had their moments last year. The straight line, they are so fast on. But just overall, they're still just kind of that back part of the midfield. But I do think they take a step forward. I'll explain that a little bit later when we get to the constructor standings. But I think Sargent takes a step forward. I think he helps Williams. I think Albon will score the majority of points for Williams, but it won't be as heavy percentage-wise as it was last year. In 15th, another team I've got low expectations for. Once again, we're at the bottom of the grid here in terms of my predictions, so it's no shock that I'm saying low predictions or low expectations so much for this part of the video. Esteban Ocon. Alpine I've been selling or, shorting, whatever you want to call it, Alpine since early 2022. After Prost left, Alpine as the consultant advisor, whatever his role was, I have just been like, nope, they're going to suck. They're going to suck. Cyril left at the end of 2020. Alain Prost left. Otmar got booted. All these other people are leaving. There's a lot going on at Alpine that's just like not giving me good feelings about them. So Ocon, I got 15th. 14th, I got Gasly. These two guys are pretty evenly matched. I think they'll be close in the point standings, whether they're the fastest car on the track or whether they're the worst car on the track. I just think these two guys are pretty evenly matched. We're going to see them pretty close to each other in the point standings at the end of the year. Both of them scored podiums last year. This year, unfortunately, no podiums for Alpine. Next up, I considered flipping 12th and 13th, but ultimately, I went 13th Albon. I think Albon, once again, he's going to put that Williams in places it shouldn't be. He's done that the last 2 years. Ever since, he had that Red Bull stint that was very short, took the year off in 2021 or had the year off, whatever you want to call it, but came back to F1 in 2022, refreshed, rejuvenated, and he has since proven that he is deserving of an F1 seat. He can put a car in places it can't be, as I've said, and I think Albon does it once again this year. And in fact, here is my first bold prediction of the year. It might be bold. I think it's bold. I think Alex Albon scores a podium this year. I genuinely believe it. I think Alex Albon at either Vegas, Monza, one of the straight line tracks, if they can continue that straight line speed and they can find just a little bit more in the corners, I think Albon could be up for a podium at Williams. Williams hasn't scored a podium since 2021 with George Russell. Remember at Belgium, that 2-lap pace car race, but still a podium. They have not scored a podium since, and before that, Bottas maybe, Felipe Massa maybe. It's been a long time since Williams' podium, and it's been a really, really long time since their second to last podium. I think Albon ends that streak this year. In 12th, I've got Lance Stroll. I don't ever have expectations for Lance Stroll. I know he's got a few podiums in his career. He's had a couple of races where he just randomly shows up and does really good, but for the most part, he's usually far and off his teammate. I get that his last two teammates have been multiple world champions in Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso, but the fact of the matter is he has just been nowhere near them. Once again, they're world champions, they're all-time greats, but he has been nowhere close. And ultimately, I have low expectations for Stroll. Respectfully, I've got him 12th on my driver standings. In 11th, I've got Yuki Tsunoda. And once again, as I said with Albon, a little bit of a bold take here. I think he scores a podium this season. Yuki Tsunoda, I just think it's going to be a solid year for him. This, what are they called now? Visa Carbohydrate, Formula One, Venmo, Bitcoin, whatever they're called at this point. I don't know what they're officially called. But Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, whatever you want to call them, they're supposed to be better this year. They were not great last year. They had their moments at the end of 2023 when they showed speed, but ultimately they were just slow last year. But this is supposed to be the RB18 or the RB19. I can't remember which one, but they're supposed to take a big step forward this year. And I'm buying into the hype a little bit. I think Tsunoda finishes 11th in the point standings, gets a podium. I think his teammate Daniel Ricciardo finishes 10th in the standings, and I think he scores a podium too. And in fact, here's another prediction for these two. I think this is the closest teammate battle this year. Not necessarily in terms of points. They may finish 6 points apart, and then, Hülkenberg and Magnussen finish 1 point apart, and you're like, ooh, technically that's closer. I mean in head-to-heads, I mean in qualifying. I think these two Ultimately, I think Ricardo, I think he's rejuvenated a bit. Just like I said with Albon, I think, that year off really helped. I think he's ready to be back in F1. But Yuki Tsunoda has a lot to prove. A lot of people prior to 2023 doubted him. A lot of people said Nick DeVries was going to be better than Tsunoda. I was not one of those people, by the way. But Tsunoda proved them wrong very quickly. Yuki Tsunoda, I think, is ready to prove people wrong again, but I'm not quite ready to have him finish ahead of Ricardo. But I do think that this teammate matchup is going to be one of the most evenly matched in all of F1 this year. And I think head-to-head wise and qualifying wise, that will be the closest battle this year. I think, there's 24 races. I would not be shocked if it was 13-11 in qualifying, 12-12, even 14-10. I think it's going to be extremely evenly matched between these two. Next up, you might be a little bit surprised by this. I got George Russell in ninth. He had a disappointing 2023, just straight up. Hamilton kind of owned him, to put it nicely. Hamilton had 6 or 7 podiums. Russell only had 2, I think. And it was a disappointing year. 2022, he got his first career win. He beat Hamilton in the points. Now, once again, Hamilton was doing a lot of experimenting for Mercedes and their concept of the car. And I know that Hamilton's leaving, which is going to make it awkward. And we could see, self-sabotage in terms of they favor Russell. And, they may not give Hamilton as much data. And, his car might explode more. But I just think Hamilton is straight up a better driver. I think he's faster. He's an all-time great. And that's no disrespect to Russell. It's just, it's Lewis freaking Hamilton, man. It's hard to beat him. And ultimately, I do think he is on that list of guys who get podium. So far we've got Albon, Tsunoda, Ricardo, and Russell. I think they all get podiums this year. 8th place, I've got Fernando Alonso after such a great year last year. I just think that the battle for second through 6th in the Constructors has the potential to be genuinely insane this year. I think the winner of the Constructors, it's over. You know who I'm talking about, but I'll wait to reveal it later on. But Ferrari looks fast this year. McLaren looks fast. Mercedes, Aston Martin, they all look very evenly matched. And AlphaTauri, they in their own way look fast. I think that AlphaTauri is still a little bit off those teams I just mentioned, but I think any given weekend, if they can show up with a little bit more pace than they usually have, they could very well be in that battle. I think that once again, they're off. And then next up, just in front of them is Aston Martin. Aston Martin came out the door firing. All cylinders were firing last year for him. Fernando Alonso scored all those podiums. Second half of the year, they just fell off, though, and it was a struggle. And ultimately, I don't know what to expect with this team. Once again, I think they'll contend for some podiums. I think Alonso gets a couple of podiums this year, but I don't think they win any races. And ultimately, I think they're behind those other teams I just mentioned, with the exception of AlphaTauri. So Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso, finishes 8th in the drivers. 7th, I'm going to go with Alonso's old teammate and old rival, Lewis Hamilton, in his final season at Mercedes. Who would have thought? Well, you could have guessed that it was going to be his final season at Mercedes, but you probably would have guessed that it would be him retiring. That is not the case. He is going to Ferrari. He's going to be wearing a red fire suit next year. It's going to be insane. The hype will be to a level it has never been. But this is it. The last year at Mercedes for Lewis Hamilton. What can he do? I think he for sure gets a podium. At least 1, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 6. Does he get a win? I'm sorry, Mercedes fans. I'm sorry, Lewis Hamilton fans. I know he wants to get that last win at Mercedes so bad, and I would not be shocked if it happens, but Mercedes just has not been themselves with this next new generation of car, and they've fallen behind. Only 1 win in the 2 years of the car, and it came from George Russell. Lewis Hamilton has not won since the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix in 2021. It's been a struggle for Mercedes, and it's not necessarily Lewis Hamilton's fault, but ultimately I just think that Mercedes falls short on the win category this year. And Lewis Hamilton, this year will have its frustrations for sure, because he's leaving, because they know he's leaving. It's going to make things awkward. He's going to get left out of meetings. He's going to get left out of certain data. He's not going to be favored all the time because he's out the door, So ultimately, I think Hamilton still beats Russell in the points, but I don't think he wins a race this year. 6th place. This is where we're getting spicy. This is not a hot take or a bold. It might be, honestly. But I got Oscar Piastri. I think McLaren takes a big step forward this year. Remember how bad they were at the beginning of 2023? Well, they stepped it the heck up. Sorry for cursing. At the end of the season, Oscar Piastri got a couple of podiums. Lando Norris had a number of podiums. McLaren looked like a completely different team the second half of 2023. And ultimately, I think they carry that momentum. I think they've got this concept of the car down to a sense. I don't think they're winning the Constructors' Championship. I don't think they're winning the Drivers' Championship. But I think they take a huge step forward. And I think both of their drivers finish in the top 6 of the standings. 5th place, speaking of awkward seasons, Carlos Sainz at Ferrari. That Ferrari looks quick this year. Not as quick as Red Bull, but it looks quick. Carlos Sainz was the only driver that was not driving a Red Bull last year to win a race. Him and Leclerc at times looked really close last year, once again. But ultimately, just like Hamilton, he's going to get left out of meetings. He's going to get left out on certain data points. There are certain things he would normally get that he's not going to get. Ferrari's probably going to favor Leclerc this year. And ultimately, it's because Sainz is out the door. Now, once again, this is not entirely his doing. Lewis Hamilton came in, and that kind of screwed Sainz in a sense. But I do think it's going to be a really good year. I think he gets a podium, at least one podium. Same thing for Piastri. I think he gets a podium, but Sainz will be on the podium a few times this year. That car is quick. He will be ready to pick up the pieces if anything happens to the Red Bulls or Leclerc. In 4th place, we've got our first winner of 2024. That not necessarily Bahrain. This does not mean he's going to win Bahrain, but out of the drivers I'm predicting to win races, this is the first guy in the standings I'm predicting to win a race. I think he gets one whole win this year, and that one whole win will be career win number 1, Lando Norris. I think Lando Norris gets his first career win in Formula 1. Where is it going to happen? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Make something up. Hungary? I don't know. But I think Lando Norris gets himself a win this year. I think he has a career year. McLaren looks really good right now. I have high hopes for him. I hope they don't fail miserably. But I think Lando Norris gets his first career win. In 3rd place, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. You may be a little bit surprised. I've seen a lot of people doubting in the guy who's I got second in the standings. And ultimately, I think Leclerc wins a race as well, but I think he gets one win too. So that leaves 22 wins between the top 2 drivers. I'm not making this up. Leclerc, once again, Ferrari looks fast, man. I don't think they're faster than Red Bull, as you can already do with the math. But I do think Leclerc is going to win a race this year. I think he's going to get a number of pole positions, as he always does. He is an excellent qualifier. But I think Leclerc is going to have a great year. He's going to be on the podium a lot. He's going to lead a lot of laps because he's going to be on pole a lot. But ultimately, I think he finishes 3rd in the driver's standings. The Red Bulls are too quick, and winning 22 races this year and winning the World Championship will be Sergio Perez. All right, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm sure you guys have heard that joke a billion times. No, Sergio Perez, I've got finishing 2nd in the driver's standings, but I think he gets 2 wins. He's been on this trend of winning 2 years in a win. He had 2 wins in 2022. He had 2 wins in 2023. He's going to have 2 wins in 2024. My prediction for those wins, one of them will be Las Vegas. He was really fast at Las Vegas. In the race, at least, he had a tough go in qualifying, as usually with Sergio Perez in 2023. But I think he takes a step forward this year. Last year was a disaster, and he still finished P2 in the standings. I think he has a better year this year. I don't think he needs down to the last 2 races to clinch 2nd in the driver's standings. I think Leclerc will beat him every once in a while, maybe even Lando Norris, maybe even a Mercedes, maybe even Fernando Alonso. But I think ultimately Perez knows that this is a make or break year for him, and I think he steps it up. I think he wins a couple of races. I think he finishes in 2nd comfortably, but he will not be anywhere near the world champion of 2024, Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen's going to win 20 races this year. You heard it here first. maybe you didn't hear it here first, but I think Max Verstappen wins 20 races this year. He's unstoppable right now. The Red Bull's too fast. He's the fastest driver in the world right now. You can't stop him. Max Verstappen is going to win 20 races this year. He's going to go insane. He's going to break all these records. But thankfully, he can't get any higher in the all-time wins list this year because he's 37 wins away from Michael Schumacher. So there's not 37 races this year. So there you go. Schumacher fans, don't worry. He's not passing you yet. But that is my driver standings. So there you go. So we've got 12 guys on the podium this year. Yeah, that's my bold take. 12 drivers make a podium this year. Albon, Tsunoda, Ricciardo, Russell, Alonso, Hamilton, Piastri, Sainz, Norris, Leclerc, Perez, Verstappen. Now, as for the constructors' standings. We're going to go through this quick because we basically recapped it already. Haas is finishing dead last. They suck this year, respectfully. Stake, F1, Sauber, kicking soccer ball into the net. They finished 9th. Alpine, I've got an 8th. That may be a shock to some of you, but once again, I got low expectations for him. Williams, I've got 7th. I think Albon does a good bit of point scoring, and I think Logan Sargent carries his load and helps them to a 7th place finish. 6th place, I've got Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, Visa, Carbohydrate, Cash App, Bitcoin, brought to you by Credit One Bank, whatever they're called now. They finished in 6th. 5th place, Aston Martin. I just don't think Lance Stroll can do enough. 4th place, I got Mercedes. 3rd place, I've got McLaren. 2nd place, Ferrari. 1st place, Red Bull. I closed my book. I forgot I had random individual predictions. Prediction number 1. Who will win the Monaco Grand Prix? Now, many of you are going to predict Max Verstappen. You're probably going to be right. I like to be wrong, okay? It took him forever, not just to score points in his home race, but to finish in his home race. Not only does he get his first podium at his home race, he is going to get his first win at his home race. Charles Leclerc is going to win the Monaco Grand Prix this season. I don't know if that counts as bold, but Red Bull struggles on the streets a bit. I know that they've improved on the streets a bit, but Leclerc's an insane qualifier. He can find it. He can find that pole, and he can hold on to the win because this time Ferrari will not mess up the strategy. Can't believe I'm saying those words. Vegas, I already told you, I think Perez wins. And then F1 returns to China for the first time since 2019. It's been 5 years. That's the only new track on the schedule. Max Verstappen's winning that one, so cool. That is my 2024 Formula One predictions. Some of them will be horribly wrong. The other ones will be Max Verstappen winning the championship, aka I will be right. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. We will talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix this Saturday. Do not forget, it is Saturday this year. Same with the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. I'm looking forward to it. I know Max Verstappen will win by 200 seconds, but I'm still excited for it. It's Formula One. It's back, baby. I'm excited, and Max Verstappen is my pick to win this Saturday. So, woo F1. Hope you enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. We'll talk about F1 all season long. We'll talk about NASCAR, and I'll see you guys in the next video.